I'm sure that you've all heard the phrase, you reap what you sow. Well, I didn't really grasp what that meant until it happened to me. I'm Samuel, by the way, but you can call me Sam. I'm 21 and currently a college student. A few months ago, I did something awful to my girlfriend, and I'm still paying the price. If only I could go back in time. It all started back in high school. Stella and I grew up together in a small town just outside of Nashville, and we were totally in love. When it came time to go to college, we both chose to study in Nashville, but at different colleges. Stella was the sweetest girl I'd ever known, and our big plan was to get married after college and start a family. She chose to study education so she could become a teacher. Her studies were so full on, she was busy all the time, whereas I'd chosen business school, and even though it was busy, I wasn't as crazy as studying education. I actually had quite a lot of spare time, so I ended up joining an entrepreneur club. Seeing as I wanted to start my own business one day, Stella totally encouraged me, and even though it meant we didn't see each other much, things were still okay between us. But pretty soon, things started to change. The more new people I met, the more I realized I was growing apart from Stella, and that, in actual fact, she kind of bored me. All she talked about were her classes, and even though she still loved me so much, she was the same old girl for years. Things just felt dull between us. So when a new girl called Jenny joined the entrepreneur club, I couldn't help but notice her. She was 3 years younger than me and so gorgeous. She liked wearing tight clothes, which could show all her body's curves. All the guys couldn't take her eyes off her, me included. One time, seeing Jenny stand in the corner of our club room scrolling her phone, I decided to approach her and see if she was as sweet as her look. I walked up to her and said, "Hey, are you a camera?" She looked confused and said, "Huh?" So I said, "Because when I look at you, I can't help but smile." She didn't even laugh. She just flipped her hair and walked off saying, "Nice try, but no thanks." Even though she hadn't been impressed by my attempt at a pickup line, I couldn't give up. If there was one thing in life I loved, it was a challenge. So from that moment on, I challenged myself to win her over. I know this was wrong because I had Stella, but guys, I was bored. However, a couple days later, there was a rumor going around that Jenny and our club's president Max were dating. Well, turns out this was indeed true, and to say I was disappointed would be an understatement. But I already had a girlfriend, so I tried to shake it off. A few weeks later, I was walking on the street when I heard an argument. I realized it was Max and Jenny, and I couldn't help but eavesdrop. The last thing I heard Jenny say before she stormed off was, "Just wait and see." Then suddenly, she bumped into me and fell onto the ground. I quickly helped her up and apologized, but Jenny said, "Sorry, Sam, I'm so upset." I felt so bad for her, so I offered to take her home and make sure she was okay. I called us a cab and we climbed in. Little did I know Max was watching us from across the street. In the cab, we were silent. Then eventually I plucked up the courage to ask, "So, you and Max, what happened?" And Jenny said that they'd broken up because he didn't like her wearing tight clothing. She said she could wear whatever she wanted and asked if I agreed. So I said, "Yeah, of course. It's your body. If I were Max, I'd be so proud to have such a beautiful girlfriend." After I said that, Jenny leaned her head on my shoulder. I couldn't believe it. Soon, she'd be all mine. But hang on, what about Stella? I decided to not say anything to her at that moment because she was busy with exams. As soon as I got Jenny, I'd break up with Stella. After that, Jenny started opening up to me more. We often text until after midnight. And in the club, she started to bring me snacks and even stayed behind to help me clean up after. She was even flirting with me, and everyone in the club had noticed, including Max. He didn't approach me about it, but I often caught him staring at me in a nasty way. As for Stella, she still called me often, but I was kind of quiet. She came to my place one day and insisted on making me dinner. She said it'd been a while since our last time together. So I reluctantly spent time with her, but to be honest, I didn't care. During the meal, I just fastened my eyes on the phone to text Jenny. I knew that Stella noticed a change in me as I looked up. I caught her sadly suspicious gaze. I was kind of nervous. Was she going to question me? What should I say? At that moment, I couldn't find any excuse for my inattention. But I wasn't ready to tell her the truth yet. My relationship with Jenny wasn't official, so I didn't want to break up with Stella. But still, she didn't say anything, so I also kept quiet. Phew! One weekend, I went to a board game cafe with the club members. Jenny also came, and when it was time to head home, she asked if I could drop her home. Obviously, I agreed, and Jenny gave me a big hug. When I looked to the left, I saw Max watching us. But neither me nor Jenny cared one bit. "Move over, Max. Jenny's mine now," I thought to myself. In the car on the way home, we chatted a lot, and she said she'd heard I already had a girlfriend. I found myself opening up about Stella, and even told Jenny how boring she was. Jenny didn't say much, but when we got to her house, she asked if I wanted to come in for a bit and have a beer. I mean, I didn't have to think twice about my answer, and I don't think I need to spell out to you about what happened next. Well, after that night, Jenny still came to the club and we continued on as friends, acting as if nothing had happened between us. But a month later, she suddenly texted me, and my life flipped upside down. "Sam, I'm pregnant," she said. And she'd even send me a photo of the positive pregnancy test. I was so shocked. How could this have happened? I immediately went over to her place and even bought another pregnancy test for her, just to make sure. Well, there was no doubt it was positive. So I told her I'd stand by her and share the responsibility. After that, I decided to break up with Stella. I talked to her on the phone and said we were too different. She was such an introvert while I was an active and open person. Of course, it broke her heart. She tried to hold me, but I was going to become a father, and Jenny needed me. Plus, I wasn't interested in Stella anymore. Over the next little while, I spent a lot of time with Jenny, and we officially started dating. I went into full-on protective mode. I picked her up every time we went out, like going to school, to our club. In public, I always took care of her, from the smallest things, such as getting her food and water, opening the car door, and so on. And of course, Jenny was very happy. Every time I did a thing for her, she always showed people how sweet and caring I was. Hearing that, the happier I was, and the more I cared for her. When there were only two of us, I brought her food and pregnancy pills to make sure she was okay. I started reading books about raising a kid. She liked to take pictures of all that stuff and post it online. Maybe she was really proud of a boyfriend like me. Eventually, I started to realize that this kid deserves a perfect family, so I decided to propose to Jenny. Sure, we might not get married for a while, but an engagement would at least make things more real. I bought the ring and arranged everything. I chose her favorite restaurant, and just before dessert, I got down on one knee and said, "I know we're moving fast, and you might not be ready, but I love you, and I want our baby to have the best life. I'll always take care of you both, and can't wait to spend my life with you. Will you marry me?" I waited, and Jenny looked shocked. Then suddenly she asked me to stand up and looked so embarrassed. Then she said, well, this is awkward. I couldn't believe it. I asked her why, and she said, "Well, I'm not actually pregnant, so I'm sorry you kinda broke up with your girlfriend for no reason." I didn't understand. I said in shock, "But the test was positive." And Jenny said, "Oh man, I was gonna tell you sooner or later. Actually, the test wasn't even mine. I borrowed it from a pregnant woman. I just wanted to get my own back on Max and prove to him that other guys also want me and that I can live without him." Oh my God, was she for real? I couldn't believe it. So I said to her, "So, you used me?" Then she almost laughed and said, "Well, duh. I mean, get real. We barely know each other. Why would we get married?" "Yeah, well done. You got me," I bitterly said. "Thanks," Jenny replied with a blank face. Then she just got up and left. I felt sick. Turned out Jenny was just a liar. She'd done all this just to get back to her ex. She played me like a fool, and I'd fallen for it. Poor Stella. How could I have treated her like that? And that's when I realized I deserved it. I'd treated Stella so badly, and now Jenny had done the same thing to me. Stella had always been there for me. She was the sweetest girl ever, and my stupid wandering eyes had led me to Jenny. Well, it served me right. But I had to apologize to Stella, even if she didn't forgive me. I couldn't live with myself knowing how much I'd messed up. So it's true what they say. You reap what you sow. I certainly learned that the hard way. And I can't blame anyone but myself. Lesson well and truly learned.
Hello guys, it's me again, Haley. In the last episode, after saving me from a sudden tantrum of Dean's wife, Eric disappeared again with no reason and couldn't even be bothered to answer my calls. In addition, the constant wave of criticism from anti-fans made me even more depressed. Now, my career was on the rocks, along with my relationship with Eric. Worrying for me, Anna and Kurt jumped on a plane to visit and stay with me for a while to make sure I was okay. Then one night, Anna received a phone call saying that Kurt had gotten into a fight and was at the hospital. We rushed there to find the place swarming with paparazzi. Were they here for me? But how did they know that I was coming? Whatever, I needed to go check on my friend right now. On the way to Kurt's room, we passed an open door, so I peered inside. And surprisingly, I saw Eric sitting on a bed and a nurse was tending to his bloodied nose. Will and Clara were also there. He was busy on his phone. She was standing next to Eric. Immediately, Anna and I looked at each other. That explained the paparazzi mob out there. And surely it couldn't be a coincidence that both Eric and Kurt were here, right? On seeing Eric, my heart tightened. I just wanted to run over to him and be by his side, but he just turned away as soon as his eyes met mine. Sensing how I was feeling, Anna took my hand and pulled me away. When we came to Kurt's room, we hurried over to him and asked if he was okay. Fortunately, he only had a few cuts and bruises. Then I said, "Glad you're okay, Kurt. Now let's get out of here first. I don't think we should stay here for long." Right at that moment, Phil arrived. News traveled fast in Hollywood, and he'd read about the fight on the internet and came straight here to find out what had happened. We left via the back door to avoid the news-hungry reporters. Once we were safe in Phil's car, Anna grew impatient. "Now, can you tell us the whole story? What happened? I thought you were going to see your friend's band." Kurt grimaced. "Geez, let me catch a breath first. I'm starving now after all that fighting. Let's go grab something to eat. Then I'll tell you about it." Anna reluctantly nodded in agreement, so Phil drove us through a nearby drive-thru. Then, while munching on his burger, Kurt started the story. "The thing is, I was at the concert, and Eric too, as you can tell. Halfway through the show, I went to the bathroom and bumped into him, but we just ignored each other. Then as I was leaving the men's room, I heard a familiar voice down the hallway, so I stopped for a second and realized that it was Eric talking to his manager, saying, 'All right, I'll do as you wish. I'll cut things off with Haley.'" "Oh my, did he really say that?" Anna exclaimed. "Yes, that was what first popped up in my mind too." Kurt continued. "You guys, I was so mad that I ran over to him and punched him right in his dumb face. That's how we ended up fighting. Haley, I warned you before. Eric only wants to feed off the perks of your fame. The first sign of trouble and he's off." Anna and Phil also agreed with Kurt and showed their strong dissatisfaction with Eric. As for me, I just gazed out the window and felt so heavy-hearted. It's the same as it was years ago. And here I was, heartbroken all over again. Anna patted me on the shoulder and asked if I was okay. I laughed and said, "It's okay. I'm fine. Nothing he does surprises me anymore." Even though I'd told her that, I couldn't shake the feeling in my heart that there was more to this story. Maybe Kurt misunderstood what was said. I mean, he's always been hot-headed and somewhat hostile toward Eric. That night, I couldn't sleep. Instead, I scrolled through my phone and reminisced on old pictures of Eric and me. We looked so happy back then. Now it was such a mess. My tears kept pouring out until I fell asleep. I woke up late in the next morning and lazily reached out for my phone. My eyes widened when I saw Anna's Instagram post. There, laid out for the world to see, was the story of Eric and me, including our blossoming love back at high school, how I'd asked his now manager to give him a chance, supported him by flying out to LA, and always being there for him when he needed me, and how in return he'd betrayed me, not once, but twice. To back this up, she'd also attached lots of pictures of Eric and me looking all loved up. Anna's post had gone viral, and there were already hundreds of comments from fans and followers. Most of them were sympathetic toward me and unkind to Eric. Then I read some of today's news stories, which exposed Eric with the headlines, "Eric the Betrayer," and "The True Face of Eric." I felt a pang in my heart. I know he messed up, but I didn't want this to happen to him. I called and messaged him immediately, but he didn't answer. OMG, why was everything so messed up? I ran to the kitchen to find Anna making coffee, as if nothing had happened. I waved the post in her face and said, "Anna, what have you done?" She just shrugged and replied, "He deserved it, Haley. I wasn't going to stand by and watch your career landslide because of that jerk. The world needs to know the truth. You can't just take this all on yourself alone. I then begged her to take the post down, and eventually she agreed to. Not that it made any difference, as everyone had already seen it. I didn't agree with what Anna had done, but I couldn't blame her for doing it. She just wanted to protect me and hated seeing me so upset. And her plan worked, as I was no longer portrayed as the villain in the media's eyes, and the number of followers on my fan pages also increased significantly. Things seemed to simmer down after a few days, and I've decided that I just needed to erase Eric out of my mind once and for all, as all these dramas have been taking up too much time for me to work on my music. But then one day, I arrived home from the studio to find Will waiting outside my apartment. He told me that he wanted to have a private talk with me about Eric. I didn't want to deal with any of this, but I didn't want to cause a public scene either, so I told him to come inside. As soon as we sat down, he glared at me and said, "I hope you're happy with yourself, as you've successfully damaged Eric's career for your own selfish needs. But remember that he's the star, not you. And unless you do something to rectify this, I will make sure you're never hired again." I was furious. How dare this man come into my home and threaten me? Okay, you can try what you like, but blaming me won't work. It's all on you. Eric told me everything. I know that you and your company forced him to date Clara. He sneered. You silly little girl. You think Eric did it because I forced him? Obviously not. He's a grown man, and he's smart enough to know that if he denied that dating rumor, then it would affect his duet project with Clara, and also their reputation, so he just went along with it, and even asked me to help cover up this fake relationship. He chose fame, not you. I sat there speechless. I didn't want to believe what Will was saying, but how could I not? He said exactly what I doubted about. At the first sign of trouble, Eric left me and ran to Clara for his own good. And this time, history repeated itself all over again. After Will left, I felt so empty inside. Nothing, just me, staring into a void, trying to deny this reality. But what's the point? Everything was meaningless now. So, in sorrow, I went to a bar in town and started drinking in order to forget my troubles. The next thing I remember was Anna showing up. Turns out she'd called me, but I was too drunk, so the barman took the call and told her to come and pick me up. The next morning, I woke up on the couch with a terrible headache. Anna was asleep on the beanbag next to me. She must have been so tired from taking care of me all night. Thank you, Anna. You're an amazing friend. I covered her with a blanket and prepared her a glass of milk with a thank you note. Then I went out for a walk to refresh my mind. I put my headphones in and let the music guide me. Before I realized it, I'd wandered over to Daystar Records. I smiled as I reminded myself why I came to LA in the first place. It was to make my singing dreams come true. I'd come so far, and that was down to hard work and determination. I couldn't give up now. I could get through this, I thought to myself, then took a deep breath of fresh morning air. But then I saw someone lying on the doorstep of the studio, clutching an empty bottle of wine. I peered down at them. Eric? Why was he here? I immediately turned around and started to walk off. I couldn't keep on letting Eric pull me down. He's just a stranger to me now. That's what my mind told me, but my body didn't listen. Before I could stop myself, I rushed back over to him and gently shook him. Hey, wake up, Eric. You'll catch a cold. He woke up, looked around, then appeared startled when he saw it was me. He looked so bad, as if he had something going on, and he had suffered a lot in a short amount of time. Then, with pleading eyes, he said, Haley, please, I need to talk to you. I gripped onto the swing chains and stared down at my feet. Someone was walking over. It was Lydia. "What's up?" she asked as she sat on the swing next to me. "Hey." I managed a weak smile. "It's probably nothing. It's just, my parents have been arguing a lot. Then this morning, Mom smelled some unfamiliar perfume on Dad's shirt and accused him of cheating. Is he really having an affair?" Lydia rubbed my shoulder. "No way! Your dad probably just got caught in a spray mist cloud at the department store or something. You shouldn't jump to conclusions that quickly. Your dad loves your mom. Anyone can see that, so don't worry." I mumbled a yeah in agreement. My name's Cora, and as corny as it sounds, before this incident, I had been pretty satisfied with my life. I'm attending a renowned university. I get along really well with my parents, and despite being an only child, I've never felt lonely, as I have my best friend, Lydia, for company. She's more of a sister to me. Regardless of the problem, I just needed to drop her a message, then we'll meet at our spot, which is the swings at the park. Yep, I had it all, and I thought nothing would ever change that. It turns out that I was wrong. So it all began with my dad. He was acting oddly. He often looked at his phone, then smiled to himself. And then he'd take his phone into the bathroom and not come out for ages. This didn't go unnoticed by Mom, but when she asked him about it, he just shrugged and said that he had some problems with his digestion. Then, while Mom was doing the laundry, she smelt an unfamiliar perfume on his shirt. She marched over to him, threw the shirt at his head, and demanded that he explain himself. Dad denied it and said it was probably just his work colleague's perfume, and that she was overreacting. That's why I arranged to meet Lydia at our spot. And as usual, she was so sweet and supportive. Lydia was right. Maybe I had thought too much. I came home and caught Mom crying in the kitchen. She looked at me with puffy eyes and said, "Something isn't right. I just know it. He doesn't look at me like he used to." I sat down, hugged her, and said, "Mom, let's stop overthinking. I trust Dad. He'll never betray us." I stayed to comfort her for a while, then eventually she calmed down. The next evening, Dad came home with a big bouquet of blue roses, Mom's favorites. Then he cooked dinner for us both as an apology for making us sad. Mom looked touched, and she also apologized for misunderstanding him. I told myself that things would be okay now, right? For the next few weeks, Mom and Dad seemed to be fine. But then, on my mom's birthday, we invited Lydia and her mom Josie over for dinner. My mom was busy in the kitchen, so I took the birthday gift off of Josie for her. That's when I smelt it. Her perfume. It was the same scent that had been on Dad's shirt. I was sure of it. Over dinner, I noticed that Josie kept on looking over at my dad and laughed at all of his dumb jokes. Oh God, was my dad having an affair with my best friend's mom? I felt like I'd explode, but I couldn't say anything to Lydia, as I didn't want to upset her. So I'd do my best to avoid my best friend until I figured things out. This worked for a few days, but then one day after a class, she rushed over to me and said, "Cora, why are you avoiding me?" I pretended not to hear her and kept on walking, but she grabbed my arm and continued. "Did I do anything wrong? Will you please just tell me?" I spilled out, "I'm pretty sure that my dad's having an affair with your mom." At first, she looked shocked, but then she hugged me and kept on apologizing. It was all too much for me, and I burst into tears in her arms. She told me that she'd talk to her mom and find out what was going on. The next day, I met Lydia at our spot. She looked super awkward, then said, "It's true. My mom had a month-long affair with your dad, but she promised that it's over." My world came crashing down around me. I just couldn't believe it. Lydia hugged me and told me it'd be okay. I was so lucky to have such an awesome friend like her. We both decided it'd be best not to tell my mom. The affair was over, so why break my mom's heart now? I tried carrying on like normal, and for the next few weeks, it really felt like everything was okay. Dad was really sweet with Mom, and he even surprised her with a posh dinner out. But then, one afternoon, I saw Dad pacing the garden. He was on the phone with someone, and I heard him say, "Okay, I'm coming now." Then he got into his car and drove off. I decided to follow him, and it soon became clear where he was going. He pulled up in front of Josie's house and then walked straight inside without knocking. My heart sank. So he was still seeing her. Without a second thought, I called Mom and blurted out, "Mom, Dad's having an affair with Josie. I'm there now. Come and join me and we'll confront them together." 5 minutes later, my mom showed up. She looked both sad and furious. We went straight to the front door and banged on it, and I yelled out, "Open up! We both know about your dirty relationship!" But suddenly, someone spoke behind us. "Hey, Laura. Cora, is everything okay?" We turned around and saw Josie standing there with a grocery bag in her hand. I was about to tell Josie to stay away from my dad when Lydia opened the door and gave us confused looks. "What are you doing here?" "Oh, do you want your dad? He's fixing the dishwasher." Then Josie said, "Lydia, I told you to call a plumber out to fix it." "The plumber said he was fully booked today, so I think that I could ask Mr. Roberts for help," she replied. Oh no! So it turns out I'd misunderstood what was happening and messed everything up. Suddenly, my dad appeared in the doorway and said to us, "What's all this banging and shouting about?" "Right, we're all going home now to talk." As soon as we got home, Dad waved his arms about in anger, then yelled at Mom, "You're crazy, jealous, and unreasonable, and I can't be around you anymore." I felt so bad. This was my fault, not Mom's. So I tried explaining this to Dad, but he just told me it wasn't my business and continued to shout at Mom. At first, Mom just sat there silently, but then she quietly said, "Is it any wonder I act how I do? I mean, you have been having an affair with my friend." "Right. If you keep on being this ridiculous, then let's divorce." Then he stormed off. It was horrible. Now Mom was inconsolable, and I felt awful for telling her. That night, I messaged Lydia to meet up, but she called me instead. She told me that she'd called my dad to ask him for the plumber's phone number, but he said that he'd come and fix it. She also said that Josie and him really were over. Then she hung up. This was kinda odd, but I suppose Lydia was finding it tricky being stuck in the middle of things with her mom and me. I guess I just needed to give her some space until things cooled down. After that, Mom and Dad barely said a word to each other. Talk about tense. Then, one day, Mom decided to move to my grandparents for a few weeks, as she needed time to think everything through. I didn't blame her, but I didn't want to stay home alone with Dad, so I went and stayed with a college friend. One night, I came home to pick up some clean clothes when I saw it for myself. My dad was kissing her on the couch. I couldn't believe my eyes. He was such a liar. So I coughed to clear my voice, then said, "Oh, so it's over, is it?" They both looked up at me, and that's when my eyes met with hers. Only it wasn't Josie. Nope, it was Lydia. She stammered out, "Cora, why are you here?" What? Lydia? So my dad had been having an affair with Lydia? How could the girl who was always there for me through high school breakups, bad grade mishaps, and growing pains do this to me? Then Dad put his arm around her and told me everything, that he had never had any affair with Josie. It was Lydia all along, and that they were in love and wanted to get married. It was all too much for me, so I rushed out of there. Lydia ran after me and called out my name. Then when she caught up with me, she grabbed my arm. "Cora, wait, I want to explain. Your dad and I interrupted her. "Why lie? Why say it was your mom?" "I'm sorry. I just wasn't ready for everyone to find out then. So I sprayed my perfume on my mom and made up the story that she'd admitted to having an affair with him. As for the dishwasher thing, well, I set that up, as I knew you'd follow your dad and call your mom. I feel bad, but your mom needs to know. He doesn't love her. He loves me." I jerked my hand away and shouted, "You're such a liar! You don't deserve to be my friend, and you can't have him! He's with my mom!" Suddenly, she changed her attitude, smirked at me, and said, Cora, let's accept the truth. Your dad is bored of your mom. Actually, I'll be your stepmother soon, my little daughter. Then she left. I had jello legs, and I was so overwhelmed that it made me feel dizzy, so I sat on the curb and tried to calm myself down. Then I called Mom and told her everything. She cried a lot, but she thanked me for telling her the truth. After that, Mom came home and told Dad she wanted a divorce. Then she demanded that he move out. This was 6 months ago, and it's been hard, but Mom and I are getting there. I haven't spoke to Dad or Lydia since, although I've heard that they're living together. I know I can't avoid them forever, but I just don't know if I'll ever be able to forgive them. For now, I'm staying strong for Mom and helping her through this. Then maybe one day in the future, if they contact me, I'll be ready to meet them, and maybe, eventually, find it in myself to let them back into my life.
It was just a regular school day, and I was sorting out my locker when suddenly I heard hushed whispers and noticed that everyone else was staring at something. Okay, so turns out it wasn't a something, but a someone, as this pretty girl strutted down the corridor like it was a runway or something. Ugh. Why was everyone gawping at her, rushing over to greet her, and sticking notepads in her face for her to sign? I hugged my books and muttered, "Geez, there's nothing special about her." So, my name's Lily, and I'm just a normal girl. My family, yeah, they're normal. My appearance, normal. And my social status, well, that's just normal too. I coast through life, and that's it. Nothing exciting ever happens to a regular girl like me. Oh, how I long to be the perfect looking girls on Instagram. They're so flawless in their clear skin, stylish clothes, and glossy hair. But those girls were different. They were from different worlds. Oh well, at least I still had my books, my bestie Sarah, and my cute boyfriend Brian. But this all changed when Stacy rocked up at school with her perfect looks and her "I'm so sweet and friendly" routine. Yeah, right. So, what if she had a prettyish face and a bit part in some TV show? Underneath the fake shine, she was clearly not all that. I walked into English class to see her sitting at the desk next to mine. Ugh, great. I couldn't even get to my seat because everyone else was surrounding her, asking her dumb questions such as, "What shampoo do you use?" and "Do you get snack breaks when you film your show?" Geez, give me a break instead. Then, when I finally managed to sit down, she smiled at me and in this sickly sweet voice said, "Hi, I hope it's okay I sit here. I'm Stacy." Yeah, sure. I forced a smile back, but on the inside, my anger was boiling over. Who did this girl think she was? So what if she was beautiful? I bet she only cared about her looks and never bothered studying. Yeah, everyone else would soon realize what a failure she was. Then, one time during recess, Stacy, the living Barbie doll, suggested we start a yearbook, and now everyone's treating her like she's achieved world peace or something. Ugh! You know the worst part of it? I've been saying we should start a yearbook for years, but no one listened to me. And guess who received so many welcome cards and love notes that they fell out of her locker and obstructed the hallway? Yup, Stacy. Gosh, it's been like weeks already. When will these stop? I hated how she thanked everyone and blushed and ugh. I needed to be around a sane person who didn't think the sun shone out of her. She was everywhere. It made me sick. But thank God for lunchtime. It became the only peaceful time of the day for me, when I could hang out with Sarah and not have to worry about Stacy. But, what was this? What was that Barbie doll doing sitting at our table and talking to my best friend? I walked over there and placed my tray down next to Sarah. "Oh, hi, Lily. Stacy just said the funniest thing." "Great," I muttered under my breath. Lunch was an ordeal. Sarah ignored me and kept on asking Stacy dumb questions like, "Is your co-star Kyle as handsome in real life?" And, "How do you style printed skirts with a colored tee?" Yawn! Later that day, due to a paint spillage in art, I was 5 minutes late out. Sarah had agreed to drive me home, but I went out to the parking lot. Her car wasn't there. Then I checked my phone and saw that she'd messaged me. Where are you? I can't wait anymore. I'll leave first with Stacy. See you tomorrow, X. What? Is she ditching me to give that phony a ride? We had been friends since childhood. How could she be fooled for Stacy's act and just throw away our friendship like that? Angry, I messaged her back, you abandoned me for Little Miss Popular? How could you? I get it. New one in, old one out. Well, thanks a lot. My phone buzzed with her reply. Lily, you know it isn't like that. You live up the road from school while Stacy lives much further away and she needed to get back in time to get ready for her filming schedule. Madder than ever, I quickly typed out my reply. Whatever. It's too bad you'll always be a nobody in her eyes and she's just using you for a free ride. Then I chucked my phone onto my bed. I'd had enough. Sarah had made her choice and it was to be friends with that fake over me. Sarah may have fallen into the Stacy trap, but at least I still had Brian, right? One afternoon, I was talking to him out in the schoolyard when Stacy tottered past. Even her try-too-hard walk was annoying. She smiled over my Brian, then she deliberately tripped up and dropped the books she was holding. I grabbed Brian's arm to stop him from going over, but he shook himself free from my grip and went over to her anyway. I watched him help her pick her books up, and then she blushed and squeaked out a "thank you." She was the worst. When he walked back over to me with this big grin on his face, I couldn't take it anymore. So I blurted out to him, "How dare you leave me to help her?" He gave me a confused look.
Lily, I was just helping her out.
Yeah, right. You knew she dropped them on purpose to get your attention, but you went over there to her anyway because you think she's prettier than me. He sighed.
You're being ridiculous. You know what? I can't deal with your selfish, jealous streak anymore. Let's just call it a day. We're done.
Then he walked off. I stood there watching him, expecting him to cool down and come back. Only he didn't. This was all Stacy's fault. She'd stolen my best friend and my boyfriend. No more. It was time to show her that she wasn't so perfect after all. I scrolled through her social media pages for ideas, and it soon became apparent that she loves boys with toned abs who ride motorbikes. How predictable. I discovered this website where I could hire a boy to play with her heart, then ditch her. It's about time she learned how much it sucked to be undesirable and worthless. Ha! I found the perfect guy called Josh. He was 19, a gym addict, and he had a motorbike. Whoa, he was expensive, but it would be worth it, right? I arranged to meet him at the local coffee shop, and geez, he was even more handsome in person. I wished I could use this money to actually make him mine. Sigh. So, the deal is, he's gonna flirt with Stacy, make her love him deeply, and then break up with her. The next Monday, I walked out of school to see Josh parked up to the school gate, holding his helmet and looking like he belonged in a movie. Naturally, every girl was staring at him, but he made a beeline for Stacy. Then, just 1 week later, I saw him picking up Stacy from the school. Whoa! I knew that! I knew I had chosen the right person. Josh was such a lady killer. They looked super close and I had to remind myself that he was just an actor and he was doing his job. Haha! She was gonna be so heartbroken. But a few weeks later, and he was still picking her up. Huh? Why hadn't he broken up with her yet? So I called him up and asked him what was taking him so long. He replied that he would do it soon. He was just making her fall for him more before he did it. Brutal. Only the weeks passed by and he still hadn't ended it. Then I was walking past the movie theater and I spotted them there, kissing. What? This was not the plan! Furious, I had arranged to meet him the next day at the coffee shop. He walked over and couldn't even meet my eye as he said,
I'm sorry. I can't do this anymore. I will refund you as soon as I can.
Why? Have you fallen in love with her or something? I said jokingly. There was a long silence. Then he looked down at the table and muttered out,
Yeah, I have.
Why was I the only one on the planet who saw how fake she was? Thanks to her siren ways, I lost my best friend, my boyfriend, and now my savings. This was it. I needed to confront her. The next day at school, I tried finding her, but she was nowhere to be found. Then, as I passed through the school garden, I saw her sitting there. Gotcha! It's time to tell her exactly what I thought of her. I stormed over to her and opened my mouth to speak, but why was she crying? When she saw me, she managed to smile and said, "Oh, hi Lily. Is there a chance you could help me?" I stared at her with disbelief. Did she think I was under her spell and would do her bidding? But then I saw what she was crying about. In her hands was her English essay with a big F on it. So I replied, why me? You're so smart. You answer all the questions in class correctly. I don't want to be judged on my bad grades. That's why I left my last school. The other kids call me a brainless beauty. I moved here for a fresh start, and now I'm still failing. Okay, so in that moment, I realized that there were things I was good at. My grades were good, and I was pretty great at remembering facts. I'd just been so blinded by jealousy that I lost focus on these things and only saw what I didn't have. None of this was Stacy's fault. She never actually done anything bad to me. I'd made it all up in my head because I was jealous of her. So I sat down next to her and said, "No one's gonna call you that because I'll help you study." "You will?" She gave me a hopeful smile and I nodded. "Thank you so much," she flung her arms around me. So that's how Stacy went from being my enemy to my friend. She's actually a really sweet and kind-hearted girl. No wonder why everyone admired her so much. And I was wrong to judge her on her appearance and not give her a fair chance. She's still with Josh and she doesn't know that I hired him to break her heart. But hey, she now has a hunky boyfriend who adores her, so that could be considered compensation, right? Brian and I are still over, but thinking about it, maybe this was for the best. I know I overreacted, but he gave me up so easily, and well, I want to find a guy who won't do that. As for Sarah, I went around to her house with a bag full of her favorite candy, and I apologized for being a jealous jerk. Luckily for me, she forgave me. Now, Sarah, Stacy, and I have become good friends. Sarah and I both help Stacy with her studies, and she gives us fashion tips. And you know what? I've come to realize that I'm pretty after all. I just needed to discover my spark. So finally, I learned that no one's perfect. Perfection is just an illusion. The most important thing is that we feel happy with what we own and never stop improving ourselves. So just be you and let everyone else concentrate on being them.
Hey, it's me again, Nancy. Only I'm currently pretending to be my long-lost identical twin, Gabby. After a chance meeting with her, she was now living my life in the countryside, and I was living hers in the city. One snag, I was crushing on her adoptive brother Jaden. But Gabby's best friend Katie also wanted me to set her up with him. What a bummer, huh? Katie insisted that I convince Jaden to tutor her on Saturday. The excuse being she had some super important physics exam. So, with my most enthusiastic voice, I went to ask him to help her. And surprisingly, Jaden found it a great idea.
"You should sit in too. Dad will be so stoked if you manage to get something above an F next time."
Oh wow, Jaden is just the sweetest. I don't get why Gabby complains about him. So, as planned, at 3 p.m. sharp, Katie appears at our door, wearing this flashy, off-the-shoulder dress that would have best suited a nightclub or something. Upon seeing her, Jaden chuckled and said,
"Oh, what's the occasion?"
Katie blushed and smiled back. But before she could speak up, I chimed in. Katie's afraid your physics class would be too boring, so she wanted to add some colors. Jaden laughed and told us to follow him upstairs to study. Katie obviously wasn't happy with my ad-lib. She frowned at me and mouthed, "What the heck was that?" And I just gave her 2 big thumbs up and acted as if I was being an amazing wing girl. We sat around a desk and Jaden started to explain physics stuff. This was so easy, but Katie kept leaning in closer to him and asked him some dumb questions while playing with her hair. I swear, the hair twirling was an act, but her not understanding any of these symbols was real. I soon got tired of playing dumb, so I jumped in and explained it instead, and Jaden looked impressed. Okay, this was fun. Katie shot me a dirty look. "Gabby, don't you have a manicure at 5? Then she kicked my leg under the desk.
"Stay. You're acing it."
Jaden grinned at me.
"Those nails can wait. You're only one F away from Dad's tantrum, and I don't want to witness that. Then he turned to Katie. You should encourage each other to do better. Then we went back to the lesson. I could tell how furious Katie was, as she was crumpling up the edges of a page on her notepad. I was secretly celebrating my little win. Then my phone rang. It was Dylan, and he sounded kinda mad. Oh my God. I'd totally forgotten that Gabby had told me about today's big date at a fancy restaurant for their 6th-month anniversary. Oops. I didn't want to go on a date with Dylan and leave Jaden here with Katie. Ugh! But I couldn't let Gabby down, so I quickly changed outfits, grabbed the gift she'd bought for him, then left. I arrived at the restaurant to see him lingering about outside, looking sulky. So I had to make up some excuse. Sorry, honey, I just wanted to look good for you. Then gave him a kiss on the cheek. Yuck. He was wearing even more cologne this time. Inside, I feigned interest in the menu so I wouldn't have to talk to him. I didn't want to mess my sister's relationship up, but I had nothing in common with this guy. Suddenly, his phone rang out. Hang on, was that a Youngblood song? Sorry, babe. I forgot to put it back on silent. I love Youngblood. His new song is so catchy. We should make a TikTok to it. He gave me an odd look. But you always hate this kind of music. Thinking quick, I replied, I guess your music tastes must be rubbing off on me. He looked extra happy, then took my hand, which startled me a little, but that was a good icebreaker. I felt much more comfortable talking to him after that. Okay, so regardless of his clothes and hair, he was actually a pretty sweet guy, and it was obvious that he really cares for Gabby. We had a lot of fun, and then he dropped me off at home. And obviously, like any couple that had been dating for months, he went in for a kiss. And I started to panic again. For your information, I haven't had my first kiss yet. And I didn't want it to be with my sister's boyfriend. I gave him a kiss on the cheek again, then fake coughing. I told him the cold the other day hadn't worn off yet, and I didn't want to pass it to him. Phew. Luckily, he bought it. Then he just gave me a kiss on the forehead and wished me goodnight. Whew! It was such a day. I threw myself onto the bed and was about to call Gabby for an update when Katie called. She moaned at me for being unhelpful on her date. Then she demanded I rearrange another one to make it up to her. So, another tutor session with math? I suggested, with zero effort whatsoever. No thanks, I'm tired of it. Gabby, you literally did no help today. This is the chance to redeem yourself. I trust you. Then she hung up, leaving me at a dead end. So I phoned Gabby for advice, and she told me to book them at a date at Jaden's favorite restaurant or something. Then, Gabby must have noticed how unenthusiastic I sounded. She added, Oh, and Nancy, I know Katie loves to do the whole mean girl act, but underneath it all, she's actually pretty sensitive and has always been a good friend to me. So please make this work for her. Okay. So I needed to be less Nancy and more Gabby, as Katie deserved to have a loyal, caring best friend. So I made a reservation, sent Katie the time and place, then told Jaden about it. And now I just sit back and let them meet up and flirt and... I mean, there's nothing I could do. It's not like I was going to stalk them or anything. But yeah, that's exactly what I ended up doing. I didn't mean to, but the thought of them being together just driving me nuts. So there I was, strategically placing myself behind a pillar in the restaurant, trying to stalk them. Then all of a sudden, someone threw an apron at me. What are you doing? The place is packed and you decide to just stand here flirting with the pillar or what? Get to work! I turned to see the waiter who had just talked to me rush off to take another order. Wait a minute. Did he just think I was a waitress because my shirt looked similar to their uniform? If so, then let the fun begin. I quickly put on the apron, lowered my hat, and hovered around the kitchen window, trying to find Jaden and Katie's order. There it was. Now, let's add extra spice on Katie's ravioli. It didn't take long for their food to come out, and Katie started coughing like crazy, having a taste of her food. Ha! But Joke on me. That only gave her a platform to act up and make Jaden take better care of her. He even held a forkful of his steak out to her, and I watched her lean in and eat it. Ugh! Later on, when the waiter walked away with their dessert order, I waited for a sec before running after him and said, "Hey, Table 17 just asked to change the chocolate cake to peanut butter cheesecake. They just told me." Then he just fixed the order without a doubt. Katie seemed to hate peanut butter so much. She made sure to let everybody know that every time we went to eat something. Well, Jaden loved PB&J, so by this way, he would see what an annoying, picky eater she was. After that, I lingered at a corner, pretending to wipe tables to stay out of sight, while keeping an eye on them. And as expected, Katie jumped off her seat and started yelling at the waiter after taking a sniff of the cake. The waiter looked puzzled, then looked around, searching for something. Suddenly, he pointed at me. "Hey, are you sure about the order? You were the one who told me that they switched the cakes." I froze as all the eyes were now on me. "Gabby, I can't believe this! Why are you ruining this for me?" Katie charged towards me. You know how bad my peanut allergy is. I could have ended up in the hospital. I don't know you anymore, Gabby." Then she stormed off. Oh my God. I really didn't know that. I didn't mean to hurt Katie that way. Jaden then quickly paid the bill, then grunted at me. "We're going home." He didn't say a single word to me on the way home. He just went straight to his room and slammed the door. I stood outside of his room and kept on apologizing. He finally opened it and yelled at me. "What's up with you? You've reached new levels of weird lately?" "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to." "I thought you'd finally changed for the better. But, well, turns out you're still the same spoiled brat you always were. Just do whatever you want without a second thought." "No, it's not like that. It was an accident. Oh, really? Then what is it like?" "It's like I have a crush on you, Jaden. I just can't bear seeing you with other girls." "What? Are you crazy? This better not be some kind of prank, Gabby. You're my sister." "No, I'm not. I'm not Gabby. I'm her twin, Nancy. And FYI, both Gabby and I aren't your biological sister either." Jaden looked at me, jaw dropped. Then I felt a hand on my shoulder. "Gabby, what did you just say?" It was Mum. She looked so perplexed, and tears were already welling up. We had an emergency family meeting, where I told them all about my chance meeting with Gabby, switching places, and how she believed she was adopted, as they favored Jaden over her. So now she's with our biological parents in the countryside. To say they looked shocked was an understatement. Then Mum took my hand and said, "Sweetie, it's time you learned the truth." Then she told me how 12 years ago, during a family picnic, I wandered off and got lost. They tried searching for me, but to no result. But now, here I was. I'd found my way back to them. They also mentioned that it wasn't that they loved Jaden more. They were stricter with Gabby because she was rebellious when it came to her studies. "It pains me to know she thinks we love her less." Dad sighed, then Mum turned to me, cupped my face with her hands. "Oh God, my poor Abby. I can't believe you're here with us now." Abby? So my real name was Abigail? I choked up. Things then got emotional. There was a lot of hugging and sobbing. It was an emo overload. "So let's go pick up your sister, shall we?" Dad patted on my shoulder and told everyone to get changed. Then we hit the road right away. It may have already been 10 p.m., but this couldn't wait. On the ride, I started to calm down and let the truth get to me as I took one good look at everyone. So these were my real parents? And that meant Jaden was my real brother too? Man, now that's embarrassing. I pulled out my phone to give Gabby a heads up that we were coming and didn't forget to add a, "You are so not going to believe what actually happened." I was expecting her to call me right back, but instead, she just replied with, "I bet you I will believe it." Huh? We arrived at my house, and my parents rushed out to me and hugged me tightly. It turns out they figured out that Gabby was an imposter pretty quickly, but she's still enjoying this farming life so much that she decided to hang around a bit more before telling me. Sorry, Nancy, but it didn't take long for Mom and Dad to notice how her daughter suddenly doesn't know how to fry an egg anymore. Then everybody laughed. We all squeezed around the kitchen table and caught up on everything. Oh boy, it got emotional again. I think we all cried enough tears to fill a lake. It was so good to see my parents again. Even though they weren't my biological parents, they loved and cared for me, despite all the money struggles. Now that we're reunited, I've officially moved back in the city with Gabby, and we now go to school together. We still come out to the countryside every weekend and spend some quality time with my adoptive parents, who, turns out, Gabby loves just as much as I do. And thanks to my biological parents, they now have the bountiful ranch they always dreamed of. It all fell into place in the end, and I couldn't be happier. Except for the little awkward moments with Jaden. Thinking back about that, it was so dumb. Maybe I'll help Katie properly this time, as, to be honest, they'd make a pretty cute couple. But she better set me up with another cute guy in return.
Ma'am, sorry to inform you of this, but according to our information, Bella Hiddleston was reported dead 2 months ago after disappearing in the forest, the secretary said. What? This couldn't be happening. But that's my name, and I'm clearly still alive. This was some sick mistake. I asked them to check again, but they kept saying the same thing. Had I been missing for so long that my family actually thought I'd died? The accident had been pretty crazy, so I was feeling confused. I mean, what had I been doing in a forest in Cambodia in the first place? I tried so hard to remember, but I couldn't recall anything. Luckily, some local villagers had found me in a trapping pit and helped me recover. Otherwise, I would have died. I then asked the people in the embassy to help me call my husband and sister. There had clearly been a big misunderstanding, and I wanted to fix this right away. God, the weight was killing me. The secretary tried, but she said, "Sorry, ma'am, we can't reach either of those numbers." This was unbelievable. I was stuck in a foreign country with no ID, no contact with relatives, and I'd been reported dead. But in a flash, I realized that I could borrow someone's phone to reach for my acquaintances via social media. So as soon as the secretary lended me hers, I went straight to my husband's profile. But I was so stunned, I almost dropped the phone when I saw his latest update. He'd just made an announcement that my funeral was taking place the following week. OMG! What was happening? How could this be real? I kept scrolling down his profile and saw my sister had posted an old selfie with him saying, "Ronnie, I know this is a tough time, but I'm always here for you. We'll get through this together." Hang on, what did she mean? Firstly, I wasn't actually dead. Hello? But also, I know my sister used to have feelings for Ronnie. Did she assume that she could just be with him now that she thought I was dead? What a traitor! We were so close. Surely she wouldn't treat me like this. I had to get home and sort this out once and for all. I asked the embassy to help me fly home without informing my family in advance. I wanted to surprise them. Believe it or not, the day I was due to arrive home was the day of my funeral. What a coincidence, right? I went directly to the funeral venue, in disguise, of course. I wore a huge black hat and sunglasses to hide my face and sat way at the back so no one would notice me. There were so many people there. My family, friends, and even my business partners. It was so bizarre. And then I saw Ronnie. He looked exhausted. I just wanted to run up to him and scream, "I'm alive! You can be happy again!" But then my sister Kylie appeared and took his arm and whispered something in his ear. I froze. They looked close, too close for comfort. And then I noticed people around me whispering, "Oh, it can't be that bad. He'll get a pretty penny from the insurance company for Bella's death." And then another lady said, "Not just that, but a younger, prettier wife too, by the look of things." I wanted to puke. Ronnie and Kylie were hugging each other now. All of this made me feel like my whole existence was meaningless. Nobody here really cared about me. I couldn't watch my sister and husband for a second longer. I ran out into the street and kept walking until I couldn't walk anymore. Then I found a motel to stay at. The next morning, I snuck home after my husband went to work. I needed to pick up some of my stuff and get some money. It was so weird being home. Everything looked the same, but I noticed none of my stuff was lying around anymore. Then I spotted it. A big box in the corner. I ran over to open it, and inside was all my belongings. I was shaking as I picked up the wedding photo that used to be on our nightstand. I mean, I was barely fresh in the grave, and already Ronnie had boxed me up. It was almost like he couldn't wait to kick me out of his life. Ouch! I wanted to get out of there, so I quickly went to our bedroom to get some cash and clothes. That's when I discovered a shocking secret that made me fall onto the floor. As I was taking my clothes out of my cupboard, a strange piece of paper fell out. And guess what? The first line caught my eye was Bella's death plan. It was a sketch showing the path leading to a waterfall and made up evidence along the way. OMG! This was it! I knew that waterfall. It was pretty close to where I had the accident. So, had Ronnie planned this? Was he sick in the head? What had I ever done to him to deserve this? I had to run out of there to clear my head, but something caught my eye at the newsstand. It was Kylie, on the front of the newspaper in an article about how she was going to be running the company in place of our grandfather. There was a photo of Kylie and Ronnie at the inauguration, and look how happy they were. They didn't seem to be upset about my death at all. I wanted to rip the paper up. But wait, why would my grandfather give up his position? He had never mentioned it. He loved his job. This didn't sound right. So I quickly took a taxi to his place to find out what was going on. When I got there, I was so shocked. My heart sank upon seeing him hooked up to medical equipment. Turns out that after he'd heard the news about my death, he'd had a heart attack. When he spotted me by the door, he was so stunned he almost fell off his bed. We hugged and cried, and I told him it had all been a big mistake. Gosh, I was so happy to see him. I could see he was tired, so I told him to rest up and I'd visit again soon. Then on the way out, I spoke to his assistant, Cody. I need a favor. Could you help me prepare a case against Ronnie? But suddenly I heard footsteps coming towards me. Bella? Is that you?
I turned around, and it was Ronnie. I didn't even have time to think clearly before he rushed in to hug me tightly. I could feel the tears rolling down his cheeks, and he seemed genuinely shell-shocked to see me. I was disgusted, though. I pushed him away and said, "Stay away from me." But it was like he didn't hear me. He just said, "These have been some of the worst months of my life. I can barely sleep or eat. I can't believe you're alive." Liar! He was a liar! I started shouting at him, saying, "Stop acting like you give a darn! You wanted me dead. Just wait until this gets out. You'll be behind bars for the rest of your life." Then I took the sketch out of my bag and threw it at him. Ronnie swore he'd never seen it before, but I didn't believe it. If it's not his, then was he trying to say it was mine, or what? Ha! Hilarious. Suddenly, Cody interrupted our argument and said, "Calm down, please. Actually, I think the one who has been acting a bit shady recently is Kylie." Then Cody told us how, according to our grandfather's will, his inheritance would be split equally between me and Kylie. However, I was to be the one in charge of the company. Kylie had found out about this and had a big argument with our grandfather. And then not long after my accident, his health had deteriorated. Instead of letting him mourn my death, Kylie had insisted he transfer the business to her name so she could take care of it all. Then Ronnie said, "Bella, it was Kylie who set up our trip. Then you suddenly disappeared. I searched for you in Cambodia for weeks, but Kylie persuaded me to come home because your grandfather was so ill. Then the police canceled the case, and Kylie kept telling me to file your death certificate. I shouldn't have listened to her. I'm so sorry." "Stop blaming other people for your problem," I growled at Ronnie, but inside my heart, I felt like I couldn't breathe. Why would my sister do this? And then I heard Kylie's voice, and to prove it all, Ronnie told me and Cody to hide. And then he went towards her and said, "Kylie, about Bella's death." Before Ronnie could finish his sentence, she gave him a big smile and put her arm through his. "Well, now that her funeral is over, nothing is stopping us from being together, right?" Ronnie forced a smile. Then Kylie laughed and said, "Oh, come on.
Don't be sad. My jealous sister didn't deserve you. You know what? She actually had this whole plan to test your loyalty, but then she ended up getting a taste of her own medicine. At that moment, my head started to hurt, and suddenly some of my old memories came flooding back. The sketch. It was mine. I was the one who'd made the plan. It all started when Kylie had told me that Ronnie was cheating on me, and I'd believed her and followed her advice to fake my own disappearance to test his love for me. How could I have been so stupid? When I realized I was alone in that forest and she wasn't coming back, I panicked and fell into a trapping pit, hurting my legs and getting stuck. It was all coming back to me now. I couldn't handle this. I ran towards her and painfully screamed, "How could you do this to me, Kylie?" At first, she was shocked to see me, but then she just smirked and said, "Are you still alive? Well, either way, it's too late. The company is mine now. Oh, and so is Ronnie, baby." Then she just rolled her eyes and said, "You were just the adopted child, so what makes you think you have the right to always steal everything from me?" At that moment, our grandfather appeared and slammed his cane on the ground. "Kylie, stop it." Kylie just sulked and said, "Honestly, why would you give her the whole company?" Then our grandfather said, "Look at yourself, Kylie. Are you really fit to be running a company? Sort yourself out. You are a disappointment to this family with your dirty, nasty tricks." I couldn't believe Kylie was still using the adopted thing to hurt me. So what if I was adopted? That didn't mean I wasn't a part of this family. She'd always been so jealous of me, even though I hadn't done anything. Kylie started crying and ran out of there saying she was sick of never being anyone's favorite. Well, maybe if she hadn't left me to die, people would like her more. I was so shocked that she'd done this to me, and all because of jealousy. I won't lie. It took me so long to work through this. I still haven't forgiven her properly, but I guess it will just take time. As for me and Ronnie, we've taken over the family business, and I realized that Ronnie had always been loyal. Kylie had just made up that he was cheating because she couldn't bear to see me so happy. One thing's for sure, I won't ever be testing his love again. No more faking death for me.
I can't believe it's been a year since Gerald passed away. I know it's been hard, but on the bright side, at least you still have your 2 wonderful daughters. Thank you. She smiled. Then she rubbed Jamie's head. I'm very proud of this one. Yeah. Jamie's pretty, Jamie's girly, Jamie's adorable. And I was just the other child. I watched on as the 3 of them relaxed on the porch, giggling about dumb stuff and enjoying their lemonade, while I struggled with the stupid lawnmower. They didn't even notice me. I quickly finished up, then I grabbed my skateboard and hurried out of there. Charlotte, stop right there. And where exactly do you think you're going without my permission? Skateboarding. I grumbled, then left. Whatever. She didn't care anyway. She just wanted to suffocate me. It wasn't like this back when I had Dad on my side. As you can see, I'm not a girly girl. All that manicure and makeup stuff just seems like nonsense to me. But my non-identical twin, Jamie, lives for it. She always wakes up extra early just so she has more time to style her hair, apply her makeup, and pick out her daily outfit. Then all she does at school is sit around with the other Barbies and giggle at pretty much everything. But guess that's the kind of girl Mom prefers, as it's blatantly clear that Jamie's her favorite. It's always me who had to do all the chores in the house, just so her Jamie could sit there scrolling through her phone. There was one time when I was washing the dishes, I heard a deafening shriek. No, my sister wasn't being murdered. Instead, there was a spider crawling across the floor. Poof! It was just a spider. Nuts! I didn't want to be a chore slave. I just wanted to skateboard. Yeah, skateboarding and painting are my true passions. But Mom told me skateboarding was for boys. Ugh, how ridiculous. So I often snuck out. There were times I got so into it that I lost track of time and arrived home to Mom's furious eyes.
You're grounded. Next time, I won't hesitate in breaking your boards in half. Jeez, that was so unfair. I pushed past her and ran into my room. Then, clutching my board, I burst into tears. I wish Dad was still here. Whenever Mom and I argued, he always came up to my room and told me how Mom only acted the way she did because she cares about me. She just has a different way of showing it. It's been a whole year since he passed, all because of a freak accident at the factory he worked in. Now, we all had to rely on Mom's home tailor job, and I just became the errand girl, while Jamie sits around looking pretty. Worse still, Mom insisted I get a part-time job to support the family, while Jamie didn't have to. When I questioned Mom on this, she just said, "Jamie isn't like you. She wouldn't be able to handle both school and work." Excuse me, what? But I knew arguing with Mom about it was pointless. Anyways, it all worked out okay as I landed myself a job in this cool skateboard store. Oh, and also less house chores. One rainy afternoon, the store was quiet, so I took out my sketchbook and designed some skateboards. Then my manager, Rick, peered over my shoulder. Uh-oh, was I in trouble? But to my surprise, he said, "That's pretty good." Then he passed me a flyer for a skateboard designing contest. "You should give it a try." This contest was meant to be, so I spent all my free time shut away in my room working on my design. I didn't see Mom or Jamie for a full week. How peaceful. And guess what? I won first prize. It was awesome. However, Mom snatched the prize money from me due to family financial reasons. So my money was going to be used on new clothes and makeup for Jamie. Unbelievable! I didn't want to be under this roof anymore. But at 15, where else could I go? Poof. Then Mom told me her work was slow at the moment, so I should enter more contests to support my family. Hey, it got me out of chores, so I agreed to it. And I pretty much won all of them. But it did annoy me that I didn't get to keep my rewards. Then when I saw Jamie showing off her new shoes, I just wanted to yank them off her feet and throw them at her. Ugh! I thought twins were meant to have some sort of deep connection or something. Not me and Jamie. We couldn't be more different. Finally, I had a day off, so I arranged to go skateboarding with Rick. I grabbed my board and was about to leave when Mom blocked the door. "Charlotte, where do you think you're going? Jamie has a date tomorrow, and her dress needs hand washing." What? This was ridiculous. I rolled my eyes and said, "In that case, she can wash it herself." "Don't take that attitude with me, young lady. You'll do as you're told." Through angry sobs, I screamed at her, "I wish you weren't my mom!" Then I ran upstairs to my room. Right at that moment, the doorbell rang. My mom calmed down, cleared her throat, and opened the door. Huh? Why was there an expensive-looking car in our driveway? And why was a wealthy-looking couple standing on the doorstep? Curious, I hid behind the wall to see who they were and what they were here for. From my eavesdropping, I found out that the couple was the Barnes. They'd just retired from their jobs working for the government in the Secret Intelligence Department. Mom and Mrs. Barnes were besties in high school, so when they both fell pregnant at the same time, Mom offered to bring their daughter up as her own, so they could go and work away on their secret mission. "We've both taken early retirement, and we can finally enjoy life. We're very grateful to both you and Gerald for looking after our daughter, but we're here to take her home now." Oh my God! Turns out, one of us was adopted. No wonder we were nothing alike. But was it Jamie or me? Could it be me? I mean, Mom always preferred Jamie, so she could be her biological daughter. I knew they were my real parents. I could feel it. So taking a deep breath, I nervously stepped out to meet them. "Jamie, come down here, sweetie." Mom called, and I froze on the spot. I watched on as Jamie appeared, and Mom introduced her to her real parents. She didn't even seem surprised. She just replied, "Yes,
I know. Then sweetly grinned. I'm so happy that I can finally meet you both. The Barnes cooed over Jamie like she was a puppy or something. Then they got emotional and all. Ugh, it made me want to puke. I ran up to my room, locked the door, and cried. Life was so unfair. Jamie was always the lucky one, while I always got the raw deal out of things. I must have cried myself to sleep, as when I woke up, it was morning. I reached for my phone. Jamie had messaged me. It's sad you missed my farewell dinner. I had a great time living with you. Come and hang out sometime, okay? Poof! I aggressively threw my phone down onto my bed. Bold of her to assume I would ever want to hang out with her. We had nothing in common. Luck alone was an example. Life went on, but without Jamie, as she moved to some rich kid's school. And I continued going to school, work, sneaking out to skateboard, and avoiding Mom as much as possible. Then one chemistry class, while we were carrying out an experiment in the lab, one of my classmates made a mistake. And boom! We were all left looking like Cinderella. And that might have actually been the best thing of that day, since we were dismissed 2 hours early. Excited, I rushed home to get my skateboard, but I knew I needed to sneak past Mom so she didn't accuse me of skipping class. But as I passed the kitchen, I saw her sitting at the table sobbing to herself. What was going on? Suddenly, she stood up and walked out to the backyard. There was a leather notebook and a pen on the kitchen table, so I tiptoed over and took a peek. It looked like her diary. Those freshly written lines were stained with tears. Jamie, my baby, I miss you terribly. I want you to live a wealthy, happy life. So I made the ultimate sacrifice. I tell myself every day that you're now a Barnes, not a Smith anymore. Not my daughter anymore. What? I couldn't trust my own eyes. What did these words mean? Could it be... But even if she mistreats me sometimes, she couldn't be that kind of person, right? I tore out that page, then hurried off to the skate park. Only I couldn't concentrate. It was so bad, I messed up my pop shove-it and landed on my butt. Ugh, this was driving me insane. That evening, Mom appeared in my doorway and asked, Charlotte, what did you do this afternoon? I answered, I told you already. I was at school and then the skate park. Did you see my notebook? The leather one? I shook my head in response. Oh, it's my expense book. I can't remember where I left it. She gave another scan around my room before leaving. When she was out of sight, I immediately pulled out my phone and texted Jamie. Jamie, I miss you a lot. Can I come over to your house tomorrow? I needed to see Mr. and Mrs. Barnes. I had to find out what was going on once and for all. Jamie replied she had a date the next day. While I was typing out a reply, she sent me another message. We can't hang out. Please stop contacting me. Okay, that was weird. Did she sense something was up? I checked Jamie's social network profile and noted down the name of her new school. The next morning, I skipped class, went straight to Jamie's school administrator's office to ask for the Barnes' address. Oh, and of course, I made up a convincing story. Jamie's my sister, but then we found out she's actually the Barnes' biological daughter. Now my mom, who raised Jamie all these years, is really sick, and I need to tell her, but I don't know how to reach her. Perfect! She handed me the address and even wished me luck. There was no point wasting time, so I skated my way round to the Barnes'. As I rang on their doorbell, I could feel my heart somersaulting in my chest. I introduced myself as soon as they answered the door. Hey, I'm Charlotte, Mrs. Smith's daughter, but I strongly believe I'm not Charlotte Smith because I have something to show you. Then I handed them the torn page from my mom's diary. They both turned ghostly pale, and Mr. Barnes even had to grip onto the doorframe to steady himself. I felt bad for putting them through this. I mean, what if I was wrong? So I suggested, let's just do a DNA test to be sure. A few days later, the Barnes turned up at our house with Jamie.
They slammed 2 DNA test results down in front of Mom. I peered down at them. Whoa! Turns out I really am the Barnes' biological daughter after all! Mom gave this expressionless look, but then in a quiet voice she said, I just wanted Jamie to have a wealthy and privileged life. She's not as strong as Charlotte. She needs this more. Please don't blame her. She didn't know anything about this. Then she hugged Jamie and cried. Mr. and Mrs. Barnes looked overwhelmed. Finally, Mr. Barnes managed to find the words to say, Jamie's also like a daughter to us now. We will take care of her like you did with our daughter, but just stay away from us. He pulled Jamie away from Mom and guided her out of the house. Mrs. Barnes hugged me as she started crying. I found myself doing the same. This was my real mom holding me. Whoa, this was so crazy. I packed my things, but as I was leaving, my old mom called me back. Charlotte, I have something to give to you. Then she handed me a small box full of cash. This is your prize money. I put it away for your college fund. You better have it back. I'm so sorry. My sight blurred with tears. Dad was right. She still cared for me. My parents will forgive you. Then you'll soon see both of us again, I said as I hugged her tightly. Then I turned and left. A new life was waiting ahead of me. In part 1 of my story, I met my doppelganger, Tracy, who just so happened to be from a super wealthy, royal blood kind of family. We made a deal where I became her stunt double to stand in for her at boring royal parties, so she could freely be with the love of her life that her family didn't approve of. It's just like a part-time job, which helped me earn some extra money to pursue my dream of being a singer. But then one time, Tracy came over and asked me to move into her mansion and play this princess act for an entire month while she's off to Asia with her boyfriend. That would need some serious thinking. How was I supposed to keep this up 24/7? I could already see myself getting so busted. Sensing my hesitation, Tracy pleaded again. Please, I'll give you whatever you want. This would mean so much for me and Arnold. You can do it, Kathy. We believe in you. She looked at me with those big puppy eyes. Oh no, what to do? At that exact moment, my mother walked out from the kitchen and said, You've been doing a great job so far, sweetie. I'm sure you'll pull it off this time too. Don't worry, it'll be fine. Well, I couldn't say no now, so I gave Tracy a nod, which made her scream with happiness. Yay! You've made my day! Tomorrow, 3 p.m., I'll be waiting for you. Then she grinned at my mother. Thank you, Mrs. Mill. And so I moved in the next day. It was just me and Tracy's dad lived in this marvelous mansion. Yeah, as well as their butler and some dozens of housekeepers. You get the picture. Luckily, Tracy's dad was rarely home, so I basically had the place to myself. It was bliss. I didn't have to lift a finger. If I wanted a glass of wine, I just rang the bell and a glass would be waiting before I even put the bell down. One day, I felt like Mexican food, and they actually flew one of the top Mexican chefs in just to make me a burrito. I could seriously get used to this whole royal blood thing. However, there were a few moments where I totally messed up. One time, Tracy's dad had a day off, so we ate dinner together. I was so nervous that I totally forgot that Tracy was left-handed, and her dad noticed right away. Sweet pea? Since when are you eating with your right hand? I stammered, trying to make something up. I've recently seen some research saying I should start using my right hand to train the left side of my brain too. Just experimenting, Dad. Oof, that was close. But it didn't stop there. Doris, the housekeeper, came into my room one day and joked, Tracy, when did you become so tidy? If I didn't know better, I'd say you had been replaced by a secret twin sister or something. I totally froze, trying not to let Doris know that she had just hit the nail on the head. I laughed it off. Oh, Doris, don't be so silly. It's me. Check my birthmark. I was kind of bored and just thought I could clean it up a little bit. But it's even more boring. Ugh. It's all yours now. I passed her my unfolded blanket and swiftly left the room. Each close call like that reminded me to be more careful. But other than that, my new life was full of wonderful things. Especially when I had Thomas by my side. At first I tried to act as cold as possible towards him, just like how Tracy would normally treat this fiancé of hers. But tell me, how am I supposed to ignore such a perfect man? He often came to visit me or took me to places. He always gave me all these butterflies with his charm and elegant gestures, and it wasn't long before I realized I had feelings for him. I just couldn't help it. He made me so happy. One night, instead of having some fancy 8-course dinner date, I suggested we try something more casual. So we went bowling and grabbed some burgers. We had so much fun, and at one point, he took my hand and said, "Thank you for opening your heart to me and giving me a chance to be your man," as he put a soda can ring on my finger. Come on, who wouldn't melt to that? And when he dropped me home, he leaned over to kiss me. Oh my God! My heart was thumping in my chest as I got out of the car. Then he said, "Good night, my darling Tracy." Suddenly, reality came crashing down. I had been delusional. It was Tracy that Thomas loved, not me, not poor old Kathy. But it's too late now. I'd been so carried away with my own feelings that I didn't realize how my behaviors towards Thomas had been taken as a green light. Both families were super stoked that Tracy finally showed some positive signals towards this relationship, and they started planning the wedding right away. The date was set for 2 weeks later. Then the plan was for us to move to Singapore for Thomas's work. I was so shocked at how fast everything was moving. This was a disaster. I called Tracy and told her everything. She also freaked out and told me to stay calm and just wait for her. She'd get back before the wedding day to stop it. Well, the wedding day was fast approaching, and there was still no sign of Tracy. I was really panicking now. And the worst part was that I couldn't get a hold of her. Her phone was off. I didn't know what to do. I cried to my mom over the phone, so she tried to calm me down. "Honey, I think if you leave now, you'll mess everything up. If Tracy's family finds out, you'll both be in trouble. Hang on a bit more. I'm sure she'll be back and everything will be okay." "But that means I have to go through with the wedding and then move to Singapore with him. I can't do that, Mom." "Why not, sweetie? I know you love him, and so far no one has spotted a difference between the two of you. Just keep pretending for now, okay?" So that's what I did. I kept pretending. While everyone prepared for the wedding of the year, I paced back and forth waiting for Tracy to get back. One day I was out in the garden trying to ease my mind when someone approached me. He looked so familiar, and I wondered if it was Arnold, Tracy's boyfriend. But what was he doing here? He asked me to follow him so that no one would see us. And then he seemed angry and said, "Tracy, why didn't you tell me you were back? I was so worried when you disappeared like that." "Huh? Wasn't Tracy supposed to be with him?" "Arnold, calm down. I'm not Tracy. I'm Kathy." "But Tracy has disappeared? I haven't been able to contact her either, and I've been worried sick." "Oh, hey, Kathy. Gosh, you two are identical." Arnold looked disappointed. "Anyway, we came back a few days ago, and she wanted to swing by your mum's place to give us some presents. Then I haven't seen her since." "That's weird. My mum would have mentioned if she swung by." "Yeah, I've asked her, but she hadn't seen Tracy either." "Kathy, we need to find her." So I immediately canceled my wedding dress fitting and went with Arnold to my house. "Hey, Mom, it's me." I called out, but there was no answer. We searched the house, but couldn't find her anywhere. Then, as we passed my room, I could hear someone inside, and the door was locked. That was so odd. So I rushed to get the spare key to open it, and got the fright of my life. Tracy was sitting on my bed. I almost screamed. "What are you doing here?" Tracy looked as shocked to see us as we were to see her. "I don't know why your mom locked me in here, but don't worry, she didn't hurt me. I'm being fed well and I have Netflix, so it's not all bad." No way. My mom would never do such things. She was the sweetest woman, and this was so out of character. Then I heard footsteps on the stairs. It was my mom. I screamed. "Mom, could you please explain? What's going on here?" She looked at me and stammered. I just planned to keep her here for a few days, just until you married Thomas and flown to Singapore with him." "Are you insane? Do you want me to steal her life?" "No, sweetie, it's not stealing. It should have been your life. I mean, why didn't he recognize his own daughter?" At this, she burst into tears and fell to the floor. Arnold rushed over and helped her up and said, "What do you mean, his own daughter?" And that's when my mom told me that Tracy is actually my half-sister. What? So Tracy's dad was my dad too? Turns out, when my mom had fallen pregnant with me, Tracy's dad's family hadn't approved because my mom was just a normal person. So they'd paid her to move to another city and stay away from Dad. But what's even worse is that my dad didn't even try and look for us after that. In fact, a few months